Okay, so this is part 3 of this thing, and or actually, well, kind of like 3.5. I did a short little clip that I'll post of the thing when I first got it running, but this is pretty much the completed version of the Supercharger swap from a Xterra Supercharged with the VG33ER to a R50 style 1997 QX4. This will work on a Pathfinder as well with the 3.3. So basically, I just want to run down everything that I found out about this. Let's see. The knock sensor, I ended up having to move it a tiny bit just because of the placement of the ground wires. You can see the knock sensor is right here, and it was originally up here. I had to swap them just because. But I am not getting a knock code or anything. I did end up getting a check engine light on this thing, not when I first fired it up, but after I timed it, and I've been driving it for a few days now, and it's the only one that I wasn't expecting was, it says that bank 1 is running a little bit rich. I have noticed a tiny bit of fuel economy go away, as you can imagine, but I mean, it seems to run perfectly fine. You know, the only other codes that I got was just for the EGR system. That other electric solenoid that I was talking about, I didn't know what it was. I don't know if you can see it or not, but, you know, this one right here, there's actually 2 idle air controls in this thing. And I did have it. It was on the naturally aspirated motor, it was underneath the intake plenum, the upper plenum. And they both kind of bolt in the same place. I just couldn't see it under the other one. But I got that reworked and everything. It's actually the same plugs. So basically, my EGR had to go away, and what I ended up doing on that is, I don't know if you can see it or not. Yeah, I just put the end of I cut the end of the pipe off, put the pipe in, hammered it flat, and it leaked. It doesn't leak. It seems to be sealing perfectly fine. Let's see, on the vent hoses right here, I had to do a little surgery on those just to cut them a little bit, just to make them fit. I used the pipe going across off of the supercharged version, and that seemed to work out just fine. Let's see. As far as the injectors and wiring, I have the original naturally aspirated engine wiring harness on this thing. I was going to do the swap, but honestly, if I'm using the same ECM anyway, it's not going to make a difference. Plus, I found out that underneath the dash, it actually is taped together with part of the dash harness, so it's a huge project to actually separate those and get those switched out. But I didn't have to do it anyways. My original throttle cable and my original cruise control cable is being utilized. They work just fine. I had to use the naturally aspirated cable bracket right here. The bolt pattern is the same, where it bolts onto the snorkel versus the upper plenum. That part's the same, it's identical. So that ended up working just fine. Just the other one was, it actually spaced these 2 cables apart. You know, the other one was like way back here. So because I'm using my original cables, I used the original bracket, and again, no issues. My throttle body, I had to replace that. The reason being that my original throttle body, which this is, has a vacuum port underneath that sticks down. The other one did not, and that goes together in my vacuum routing. So I ended up plugging one vacuum line, which comes off. I don't know if you can really, probably can't even see the damn thing. Where the heck is, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, this bolt right here is a little stubby vacuum line, and I just stuck a bolt in it to plug it off. That right there is your EGR control solenoid. Since there's no EGR, I just blocked it off, and that seems to be all right. Let's see, what else? The original brake booster hose right here, for the naturally aspirated, it actually goes onto the snorkel just fine. I was able to use that just fine. This hose right here that actually goes to, this is actually the purge solenoid, I believe. And I just noticed that's loose. Great. Okay, I'll fix that. That might be why I stumble in a little bit. But yeah, so that's the original one, and that goes onto that nipple just fine. I just had to put a little electrical tape on it because the diameters are a little bit different. That's probably why it slid off, but we'll figure that out. I'll put a screw clamp on it, and they ain't going nowhere. The dipstick is the original dipstick. I was able to utilize that. Let's see, what else? The mass airflow sensor is the original mass air for the naturally aspirated one. Seems to work fine. I know the part numbers were different, but I guess it doesn't really matter so much. Passenger side valve cover was different, like I said, because of the PCV valve, which is right here. And this pipe right here for the PCV grommet actually goes straight back. The other one kind of shoots off at an angle, and there's no PCV, so I had to change that out. O2 sensors are all the same. All that stuff is the same. I showed you guys in the older video that the pulley bracket had to be notched out, but I took care of that. Just a little pinch bolt is all it takes. Just something to hold it from flapping around, and you're good. I've had zero issues with it. Distributor's original, spark plug wires I had to swap over from the other one. One heat range colder plugs, lower temp thermostat because of the supercharger. All that stuff's got to get changed over. Also, I found out that the fan clutch is the same number of blades. The blade itself is the same, but the clutch I think might be different. There's a little colored dot that they put from the factory on the fan clutch, and it was a different color. I don't know if there's a difference or not in actuality. It might just be like a year thing. I don't know. But one of them did seem like it spun a little easier than the other, so I swapped those over. I mean, I've had zero issues with this thing since I did that. As far as the pulleys themselves, this is interesting. Okay, so this is what I did. We'll start from the bottom. Let me get you a nice view here, if I can. Okay, so the crankshaft pulley has to get swapped from the supercharged version because of the difference in number of ribs, and also there's diameter differences as well. It's a 3 pulley unit, but it's all one piece. There's no separate, you can't take any of the rings off or anything like some of them you can. No, this is all one unit. You got to change the whole thing. The other thing that I found interesting is on the power steering bracket. I don't even think you can really see it, but I'll explain it to you. Yeah, the power steering, well, first off, the power steering pulley, I was actually able to swap the pulley from the V-belt pulley to the serpentine pulley, and it was a direct swap. It went right on, same diameter, everything. You take the nut off the front, and there's splines that hold it still on the pulley. And it's the same size hole, same size spline, same size nut, same everything. It's a direct swap. I didn't need a puller or anything. I just needed, something to hold the pulley from turning while I got the nut off. And that was one of the easier things I had to do. The alternator pulley is a little bit different. My factory alternator has the extra rib. So I just put it riding on the inside, and everything lines up fine. The AC compressor pulley that I used to use my original compressor clutch and compressor deal, because like I said, the brackets going on the motor and everything are totally different. So because of that, the supercharger belt runs around the AC compressor and the crankshaft. So I'm running 1 rib shy on the crank and the supercharger in order to accommodate that. And in order to get the correct size, what I ended up having to do is take a razor blade and cut one edge of it off. I had to cut 1 rib off of the belt in order to have it be the correct length so that I could actually use this thing. I'll get numbers for you in a second. I saved them all. But again, zero issues as long as you take your time and you do it nice with a really sharp razor blade. I've had zero issues with it. It's not slipping at all. It's getting full boost, so I don't see any issues with it at all. And all the pulleys line up fine. Nothing's walking around. so we're fine that way. The antifreeze pipe right here has to be reused off the original non-supercharged engine. The supercharged one's a little bit different shape because the chassis are different, but that's not a huge issue. Fan shroud, radiator, all that stuff is different, so you'd have to reuse your original stuff. But that's fine. That's, again, a chassis difference, so as long as it's an R50, then just put the R50 stuff back in, and you're good to go. Let's see, what else? Okay, getting back to the pulleys, the water pump pulley right behind the clutch fan, that you have to take off the supercharged motor. That is a smaller diameter pulley. You cannot use the original naturally aspirated one. It's a bigger one, and it actually interferes with stuff. Also, oh, I almost forgot. When I started talking about the compressor and everything, underneath the compressor where the power steering pump is, the inside bracket, the lower bracket, where it bolts to the motor, you actually have to shave off the corner of that bracket underneath the bolt hole that holds it to the engine. The reason being, if you do not, it interferes with the crankshaft pulley. When I took my pulley off, I found out that there was a huge chip missing out of the back of the pulley, and I didn't understand why. It was an older wound. It was all, you know, it had surface rust on the brake and everything, so it's not something that I did. But I was wondering why. Well, when I turned it to number one, so when I put the thing together and I put it at number one cylinder, top dead center, so the timing marks lined up, amazingly enough, that notch lined up perfectly with that bracket. And I was not able to turn the motor by hand because the bracket was sticking through that notch. So I'm thinking somebody before me on the other motor must have had something happen, and, you know, for whatever reason, they tightened the pulley and it interfered and cracked it. But the rest of the pulley was fine. Not a huge chunk that was missing out of it. Didn't interfere with the ribs. So I said, screw it, send it. Had zero issues with it since, but I had to notch that bracket to make sure that it didn't hit when the pulley went around. That's very important. As far as belt sizes, let me go back here. I got the packages, you know, little jacket things that they came with. All right, let's see here. There they are. These are the 3 belts you will need. Now again, this went on a 1997 QX4. Because of the year, it may be different for your application. You can double check, but this is what I did. Okay, so we will start off with the innermost. It is a 365 K5. That is your power steering belt, and that is utilizing the supercharged version serpentine pulley on the original R50 power steering pump on the driver's side. Factory pump, factory bracket. Just got to shave that lower bracket so the crank can clear, and you're good. This belt fit perfect. Next one, 405 K5. That is going to be your alternator belt, okay? And that is utilizing the original alternator on the R50, the original bracket for the R50, and it is utilizing the supercharged water pump pulley, which is the smaller diameter, okay? And that takes care of that one. Fits perfect. Now the supercharger and AC compressor belt, I got a 705 K6. And it worked perfect lengthwise, absolutely perfect. But like I said, I had to razor blade one of the ribs off because my AC compressor was one less rib. But I've had zero issues with it, no slippage, no problems at all. So those are the 3 sizes of belt you will need. You cannot look these up. This is something I had to do with about 15 and a half trips to AutoZone to figure this out. Because there's no catalog that you can look this stuff up in, because you're putting something where it ought not to be. So a 365 K5 is your power steering, 405 K5 is your alternator, and your 705 K6 is your blower. Those are the 3 belt sizes that you will need to do this, at least on this particular truck. Like I said, there may be differences. You'd have to take and just either trial by error or double check. Not going to be too fun. It wasn't for me, but you know, other than that, it was fine. I did have to cut the hole in the hood, like I said. I did it a little bigger than I should have. I miscalculated a little bit, but yeah, it still looks okay. I'll show you with the hood shut. And that's about what you got to work with. The hood bumps up a lot more than I thought it did. I should have cut it where I originally said, like behind the 5th rib, and I think it would have worked out perfect. But, you know, hindsight, you guys can learn from my F-up. I do suggest utilizing the factory nose cone. I know that at least in Massachusetts where I am, to my knowledge, or from what I've been told at least, if you don't have that cover on it, it's actually illegal. You can't get a sticker. The reason being, if something gets caught in the belt, or you know the belt flies off or whatever, they want something to keep it in the engine compartment. So this keeps it legal. Doesn't look quite as cool, but you know, I mean, it still looks badass. Who am I kidding? But just something to keep in mind. Also, just the safety aspect of it. You know, I mean, somebody's sticking their fingers in it when you know getting something caught, or you know, road debris or whatever. Haven't had any issues with water getting into the engine compartment, causing any mess ups or anything. I did end up timing it with a timing light, and it runs a lot better now. Still not a race truck, like I said. I've driven it for a few days, got a lot of the bugs worked out, most of them in fact. Like I said, I did end up getting a check engine light, but it's only for Rich on bank 1, and no EGR. The computer's still looking for that, and it ain't there anymore. But other than that, 0 issues. It shifts better than it did before. It doesn't slam into gear like it used to. It's nice and butter smooth. Tiny bit of a hesitation when you first step on the throttle, but that goes away as soon as you know you get going. And man, it's literally exactly like driving a VQ as far as horsepower and torque. It feels like the newer version of these trucks. It's amazing. I have 0 complaints about it at all. Yeah, the fuel mileage is a tiny bit worse, but overall, I think it's a very big improvement. Also, I did put a boost gauge in this, which anything forced induction that I've ever done in my life has always had a boost gauge. You can see it right there. The trans temp gauge, that's just something to fill the hole. It's a dead gauge right now. I might hook it up later, or I might put an EGT in this thing or something, or air fuel gauge. I have an Innovate that I might put in this thing. But for right now, that's what it's going to be. The boost gauge is operating. It does work. I'm showing a little over 6 pounds under full throttle, but I think I might have to adjust the bypass valve, and I think I can crank that up a little bit. I'm not going to bother swapping pulleys or any of that stupid stuff. I mean, I'm starting off with a motor that originally was naturally aspirated, so this motor has almost a point higher compression than the supercharged version already. So if you push boost too much, you're going to run into detonation issues, even with premium, and I didn't want to get into it. I mean, this is more than enough for what I was looking for. It does everything I need, nothing I don't, and it's reliable. You know, I haven't had any issues at all with this thing. Very highly suggested swap. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. A little bit of a learning curve, a lot of differences, little quirks here and there, little intricacies you got to worry about, but it's not that bad of a swap. I've done way worse, and it didn't really take me that long to do, just a few days, and that was just because I was, you know, just dicking around. I mean, if this is a customer's car or something and it had to get out of the shop, I'd say maybe 8 hours, you know, 8 to 10 hours, and from start to finish, as long as you got the other truck sitting there to rob stuff off. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's literally just like doing an intake swap for most of it. So that's pretty much it. That's the swap for anybody that's interested. Leave some comments down below or whatever. Like the video if you like. That would help me out. And if you got any questions, I'll see if I can answer them in the comment section. And I'll be more than willing to help anybody out that's thinking of doing this. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Wish me luck.